Welcome everybody to another edition of Squash Canada's Coach PD webinar. Today's topic is teaching life skills through sport, presented by Glenn Mulcahy from Paradigm Sports. Glenn is back. He's presented with us before and on a number of great topics. So today's topic is in relation to, as I said, teaching life skills through sports. It'll touch on valuable life skills and social emotional learning. Glenn will share both his personal anecdotal experience from playing sports at the rec level and then up to high levels of competitive sport where he played on teams that won provincials in 3 different sports, and how his coaches were intentional in teaching the lessons that guided him to go into coaching. So Glenn has impacted over 5,000 coaches across the country through coaching, as well as through his webinars. So we hope you enjoy today's presentation. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask as we go through the presentation today, because we are a small group. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn and enjoy today's presentation, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for inviting me to be back. And I always look forward to interacting with coaches from other sports. So welcome, everybody. This deck is one I've presented a few times already, and it's one that I'm pretty passionate about because I truly believe that sports can teach life skills, but coaches must be intentional in doing so. So I know that everybody is doing this at their lunch hour, so I'll jump right into the presentation. Because we have a small group, I'm more than open to questions throughout the presentation. You can throw them into chat, and if I miss them, Jeff, just table them to me, and or questions at the end. I'm a big believer that facilitating is all about facilitating learning and not dictating. So would ultimately like to learn as much from you as you will hopefully get some great nuggets from the presentation. So without further ado, we'll jump into it. So okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of my background and my story and why I'm so passionate about this. And it all starts from a lesson, a very valuable lesson I learned when I was very young. Sadly, I lost my father when I was 8 years old. He had a tragic accident. And at the service, one of the things that he told me when I was growing up is men never cried. And so I tried to be numb at the service. And my mother and my grandmother, say it's okay to cry. I said, nope, nope, nope. And then through the service was finished, I told both of them I was going to quit baseball. And that year, ironically, was the first year that my father had ever stepped out to coach me and my team, even though I was playing sports from 4 years old. Started playing hockey and then played baseball and played a whole bunch of other after that. He had a job that just didn't permit him to do it. And sadly, never really got to know him through that venture. But they both convinced me that I was not going to quit baseball and continue on that path. And I actually went on to play a pretty high level, as well as a number of other sports. So commitment was one of the many lessons I learned through sport as a result. And then there was many others. So played a lot of golf growing up, had some great instructors. So integrity was one of them. Resiliency through the BC Summer Games, where I went on to win gold medal in rugby. Played the last 2 games with a really bad Charlie horse, and we went on to play gold. Trust, obviously, you have to trust your teammates and team sports. Learned all that, and then also instilled by the coaches. Leadership, I've had been for the great coaches I had in many, many sports, teaching me the importance of being a great leader. I probably wouldn't be where I am today. Work ethic was kind of a given with all the sports that I played, but sadly, I've noticed a lot of today's generation, they don't necessarily have that. And it's probably because many of them haven't played sport to a high level, because many are quitting or at early ages, which is one of the reasons why I do what I do. Sportsmanship through all the sports, and then a whole myriad of other life skills that I gained: teamwork, selflessness, persistence, making sure you go and you finish to the end, the sacrifice, and the list just goes on and on and on. But most of these skills were as a result of the coaches that I had in the sport were reinforcing it and were intentional in teaching it. And a lot of people say that sports teaches character, but I believe it's the coaches in the sports that teach character. So what I want to do now is we're just, so we have a small group. We'll go into a couple of small groups and go into breakout rooms. Some of you, probably all of you, are familiar with it. What I'd like you to do is just have a small discussion. We'll do it for about 5 or 6 minutes. what are the life skills that you personally learned through the sports, whether it be squash and or any of the other sports that you learned, and how did you learn them? So Jeff, you can just set up the two groups, and we'll do it for about 5 minutes, and we'll circle back and we'll just have a group discussion just to figure out where you're all at in terms of sports space and what you learned in terms of life skills that carried forward into your coaching path. So we'll go two groups, Jeff.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so now that you're all back, small group, hopefully we can open it up for a group discussion. I'd be curious what you talked about in your breakout rooms, life skills. Anybody either can chat, or if you're comfortable with unmuting and having video on, feel free to do that as well. I'm really curious what the discussions were. Anybody?
Well, we're
Okay,
guilty
go,
of
Simon.
doing some catching up.
Yeah.
Just figuring out who's what and where and what's happening in our communities. But
So you never got to the actual task?
well, we got to it, and the key
Barely.
word is resilience.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
I'm helping coach the Brock team, and we were on the bottom half of the universities in Ontario, and the women's team was at the very bottom. Anyway, they played with great heart, great perseverance, but resilience. They were resilient. They took their lickings. They knew they were going to get clobbered going against certain schools, and they went out there and fought their nerves and played valiantly. And I was very proud of them.
How much influence did you have on teaching them that resilience? Was that a reinforcement on your end, or was it something that they just they had that attitude to do it? Just out of curiosity.
Well, we were honest with them about what they could expect, and so we talked about the fact that they probably were going to get clobbered. But that's not what it's all about. Winning isn't everything, and all the other things. And so we were encouraging them left, right, and center to do their best, to go for a personal best, to accomplish whatever they could in a smaller way, other than measuring themselves by a win against some of the super strong schools.
Awesome. It reminds me of when I coached high school rugby. I had a team that I think there was only 3 returning players. All the rest of them were trying rugby for the first time. And I told them right at the beginning of the season, there's a strong possibility we're not going to be that competitive, but just focus on learning the skills, the work ethic, et cetera, et cetera. We played in one game where we were getting thumped at halftime, and the referee came to us and said, "Do you want to call this game?" I turned to the players, said, "You guys want to call it, or you want to keep going?" And they all said, "Keep going." The trainer after the game from the other team came to our team and said that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen, that these guys wanted to keep playing. And it was like they had their heart was in the game. And that's really where it kind of came from them, but also reinforced by coaching staff. So awesome. Was there any other input from the other group? Did you get to life skills, or were you still talking about where you're at in your seasons?
Hey, this is Tammy.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we were in the same boat. We were sort of introducing ourselves to one another. I ended up talking a little bit more than Emanuela did. Sorry, Emanuela. I come from a background of amateur sport, and I have a recreational therapy background. And have spent the last 20 years working with children and youth with disabilities in the sport environment.
Okay.
Everything that we do is life skills. So, and that's with our athletes, but it's also with our volunteers. We've got a wide range of abilities within our program, both cognitive and physical. So part of our program is teaching, obviously, life skills, but also creating mentorship opportunities and growth opportunities as our athletes age. so that they become leaders on the field, and so that they are they're leading athletes like themselves, and our athletes are seeing people like them on the field that are leaders. So that's pretty important for our program.
Awesome. I'm going to show you a video of one, or actually a couple of them are doing that similar kind of concept where they're creating that whole mentorship program through it, which is, it's being done intentionally because that's their program. So great, good stuff. So let's jump into more meat and potatoes in the discussion. So we've done the breakout sessions. If you haven't seen this video, I highly encourage you to watch it. When Nelson Mandela was introducing Pele into the Global Sports Hall of Fame with Laureus, I think it was 2001, and his speech, "Sport has the power to change the world," is one I highly encourage you to watch. It's very powerful, and I strongly believe that it can, and it has proven in many instances. If you think of Humboldt, when the whole world came together, when that bus crash affected the lives of all those young players, it does have the power to change the world as far as I'm concerned. So I'll show you three quick videos and three different programs that are intentional in teaching life skills through their programs. The first one is one done by the Cincinnati Reds Major League Baseball team. It talks about how they're teaching life skills intentionally.
Following a very successful debut, the Home Base program made its much anticipated return this summer as the Reds and the University of Cincinnati look to take the program to the next level.
Not just about baseball here, it's about, talking to people and being a leader and, all these other things like life skills, and where the other ones were like basically just baseball. I think you get like the whole life experience here.
But to take that next step with a program like this, it requires a certain level of effort on behalf of the student athletes, a level most are more than willing to provide.
This program means a lot to me, mainly because as a kid from a low-income family, we don't have the best education, and I went from like a 19 on the ACT to 125.
It's those success stories that prove the importance of this program in the community.
Just look at the test scores. I can guarantee that more than half of these kids are going to get better scores than they did on the pre-test, because it's just a great experience for everyone.
But it's more than just improving test scores. It's about teaching life lessons and skills, such as dress etiquette and basic car maintenance.
The impact that they're making on these young women and men in this community is enormous, and it's honestly invaluable. And so to be able to be a part of really not only growing the mind of these children, but their athletic ability and also their belief in themselves and the belief that they can exceed further than their possible imagination, I think that there's really no words to describe that.
To help cultivate that success, the program provides each participant with a mentor, giving them another piece to their support system.
It gives you a lot more confidence in anything that you do, because you have those people to fall back on.
Mentorship, that's something that's always been huge with me, because I've been in the amateur space for the last 9 years, and there's nothing more important than watching the youth grow.
And confidence is the name of the game, and certainly something the coaches would like to see as a takeaway from this program.
A lot of life lessons are learned while playing the game. Baseball or softball is not easy. You fail a lot, and it just teaches you how to bounce back and to trust and believe in yourself and have confidence in yourself. And those are all huge life lessons that help you off the field.
It's a week these student athletes will never forget. And thanks to the support of the Reds Community Fund, this program will continue to grow and impact those in this area for years to come.
It's honestly been extremely amazing, with having the Reds behind me, getting me through the things that I have problems with, money-wise, class-wise, and sports-wise.
Similar to what you're doing, Tammy, and the reinforcement of the mentorship, they're growing their players, and some of them have been with it for a very long time. So let's going to get to the next one.
Follow.
First Tee program, similar to Canada, also has a similar one, and they're doing their literally the whole life skill program. And I'll touch on the Canadian version shortly, and then we're going to get into this one. Was really cool. I actually had an opportunity to interview Sharda, who was with the Grizzly program from inception. She's now moved on to another program. May or may not recognize Grizzlies because they were originally the NBA team in Vancouver, moved to Memphis. So there were some ties. They're not only teaching life skills through basketball, but interestingly enough, in their area, they're actually growing a rugby program to teach the same. So this is a great recognition of an amazing program as well.
They don't get the opportunity to experience and really be a kid and go outside and play with other kids and make those connections, but they are doing great in school. They are making relationships. They're building relationships with other students that they wouldn't build relationships with through our program. And I think that needs to be talked about more.
Because PE is being taken out of the school day, what we're looking to do is leverage coaches as mentors to get kids moving. It's about empowering healthier choices, empowering awareness and mindfulness, and the fact that who we are and what we do, ultimately, it derives from the choices that we make.
There's a bigger goal in mind. I know our goal is to get them fit and give them an idea of what fit means, but it's also important for us to guide their mentalities and guide them into making better decisions and dealing with the issues that they're facing.
I get to go make a difference, giving them an opportunity to have somebody that cares about them and that's going to be there for them no matter what.
When we create access to play or access to movement, we're creating access to life.
This program works and it makes a difference in this community, and it can make a difference anywhere that we go as long as we employ the right coaches, the right people, and we get kids in a community that comes around them. We're unstoppable.
Because it's such a big fan of rugby, I thought it was amazing. They're doing rugby in Memphis. So Sharda was one of the most passionate people I ever talked about when she started the program, and it's had a huge impact on those kids. Golf Canada also has their life skills program, and Brooke Henderson's here in the picture. Broken into two pieces: the intrapersonal, so focus on their perseverance and resilience and goal setting, and then also keeping their emotions in check. Many kids today are struggling with that whole concept. The last 2 years with COVID was just really a challenge for many of them. And then switching the other hat, the interpersonal, in terms of, and that was a great concept, sports personship instead of sportsmanship. So spinning it into en masse, all people that are participating in sport, honesty, teamwork, and respect are their key focus in that's their program, similar to the first tee that PGA is doing in the US. Sport provides an amazing backdrop for developing life skills. So Plato, the moral value of exercise in sports far outweighs the physical value. And I couldn't agree more, and grabbed a picture of street hockey way back when growing up in Montreal. We played a lot of outdoor hockey and probably learned a lot more of that, and that was without coaches. Interestingly enough, Trottier and Robitaille are really big researchers in life lessons that you can learn through sport. They serve at high school, community coaches. Two key things that they were teaching was self-confidence and respect, but what they weren't focusing on was visualization. And this is the whole gamut of the grid of the various life skills they focus on in terms of heart, hands, health, and their headspace, their goal setting, and a lot of grids on the SEL matrix are kind of following suit. And there's a lot of researchers now in the space and starting out in the community-based programs, but starting to get into some of the high performance programs as well. Right to Play, if you're not familiar with it, is really encouraging inclusivity and diversity through sport. This is a program for the Aboriginal youth in Canada, and they're focusing on core values, their attitudes, skills, and knowledge of not only the sport, but developing leadership and teamwork and just community engagement, which is a real big focus of Right to Play. And it is a global program, and it is grown into the Canadian marketplace. And I'm pretty excited to see that the influence that they're having on the impact of various communities that have been underserved. If you've not heard of, and this is more on the teaching space, a lot of teachers, especially in phys ed, are going down the path of social emotional learning. Starts off in homes, communities, and morphing into the schools and classrooms to then ultimately focus on 5 key components. So self-awareness, management, responsible decision-making, focusing on relationship skills and their social awareness. So that's the whole spectrum of social emotional learning, and it is starting to become a key component. And then there are programs, again, we're affiliated with a group in the US where they're working with a lot of schools now to focus on this sector and tying in physical education to coincide with that. So they're getting kids active, but also working on their life skills and emotional learning. Don Hellis wrote a book, Teaching Personal and Social Responsibility. He's an ex-Marine, and he's developed a similar grid, where he's identified out of the gate the kids that come into the program start off with needing improvement, and really focuses on their self-control and emotional regulation and getting involved in their communities, teaching their self-responsibility. And ultimately, the center point of their SEL grid is the caring component, caring of self and caring about others and contributing back to the community. And it's all done intentionally, and growing that from morphing to a leadership and a mentorship space, which is an amazing program. And I highly encourage you, if you haven't read the book, you can pick it up. A question, I'm just going to pose it to the group, and we'll just do it as an open discussion versus going to rooms. So question is, are life skills developed through sport automatically, or does it have to be done intentionally vis-a-vis coaches and or leaders in sport? And anybody can either go through chat or unmute, and let's just have an open discussion. Yes or no? Automatic, or is it intentional?
Can I choose all of the above?
Actually, I agree with Simon. It can be automatic, but automatic doesn't mean good. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
Things can go really bad. I think so. So I kind of like how you have all these. I'll just talk for a second. I like how you had books that outline it and have plans and, and actually prioritize some things. I agree. That's why I'm like, I also like how, I think Tammy was speaking before, like, yeah, I agree with those positions entirely. It can be automatically bad. So that's I can add that.
It could be, yeah, and I agree with you, because the term bad coaches, fortunately, is starting to not be a discussion. One of the reasons why I got into this space like 8-9 years ago was both my kids had incredibly bad coaches that taught them really bad lessons. And I'm like, this is just wrong. So because I was fortunate, a lot of coaches took me under their wing and taught me, the right way to do things. And thankfully they did, because if they'd not, who knows where I would have ended up. I also had a couple of really amazing high school teachers, because I had no plans as a kid for, losing my dad. I really went through a real tough period in my teens. I had no intentions of going on to university, no intentions of really making much of my life. And it was those people that kind of guided me that path, much like the Memphis program, helping that inner city community kids, aspire for greatness down the road. So I believe there has to be some intentionality, but you're right. It could be a default, and it could be on the latter side. So anybody else want to pipe into that? Or
I'll add one more thought here. Just everyone seems to be a little quiet. Just to break away from the automatically bad. I want to dial that back a bit. when I was young, basically, I'm just going to say, I agree with Glenn here. There was the default mode was don't cry, don't complain, don't turn down a fight, don't disappoint your dad. And I think that was the formula. So, I think that formula has to change. I mean, that formula, I guess it kind of worked, but that was how it was. I kind of let, things have advanced. I think we've advanced, there have been many positive things. And, I really believe that too. But, I think moving towards a more modern, a modern approach to coaching, or more, it looks like you cover a lot of areas. I think that's actually to the positive. I wanted to get that out. I don't think that my previous coaches were all bad, but there was a formula. That was the formula.
Yeah, and the era of coaches coaching the way they were coached, fortunately, is evolving, where they are doing, and kudos to all of you that are here today, that are pursuing and getting more insight on the other part of the coaching, the how of coaching. And there's lots of people that can focus on X's and O's, skills, drills, strategies, but even Hockey Canada, and I was so ecstatic they finally have added into their competitive program, they've added transformational leadership. They've added a couple of other modules on that how side, and that's all been driven through Jean Cote and all their work that they're doing on transformational leadership, but also on what's it, or the word on PYD, which is the personal youth development programs that they've done a lot of research on, is coming in too. And 10 years ago, they wouldn't even consider any of that. So it is evolving. So, all right. Gonna get rid of the chat. So we'll just go back to the two small groups and share with your colleagues, now that you've had a chance to get to know each other. We'll go back to those same rooms, the life lessons that you learned that you're intentionally teaching with your athletes. So we'll give you a few minutes to do that, and hopefully we won't cut you off too soon. So Jeff, you can put them back in the same rooms. So what ways are you intentionally teaching life lessons with your athletes? All right, so now that everybody's back, group discussion. So what did each of your groups discuss, or you're doing intentionally, kind of share with others so we can kind of steal from other ideas? Anybody?
I nominate Simon because I talked last time, but we had an interesting contrast. So maybe Simon can say what happened with our, in our discussion.
Yeah, right. Well, big part of it is that we're working with two different age groups. I'm dealing with the university age group, and David's dealing with younger junior players, and the needs are somewhat different. But what I was talking about, one thing from a psychological training point of view, I really like the work of Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, and that when you're teaching technique, you want them to learn the lesson, learn how to implement it physically, and then do that on repetition to get it into their automatic system, so they no longer have to go through the thought process. It's there for them as a tool that they can call up as needed. So that works well with an older group. I use the analogy to driving, where you become very automatic about how you drive, even though you're handling a lot of data that's changing constantly, and you're adapting constantly, and you do it all without seeming to put in any effort whatsoever. So they can relate to that because they all drive. And but David's group is much smaller, or younger rather, and those kids are into a different kind of reality. And he was focusing on the fun side, and I definitely agree that the fun component needs to be there. That's part of the social skills and so on. But David, maybe you want to comment on how you approach the younger ones.
Yeah, just really quickly, it was for for the kids. We have a very diverse background in the squash, so our job was to make it less elite. I'll say there is kind of an elitism with squash. Make it less elite, make it available for as many kids as we could. With they have we have a broad background. Like honest, they are from everywhere. So get them so they can, there is actually, when you're kids, even though it's an individual sport, there's a team component. You're playing together, you're moving around together, you're practicing together. So we want them actually to have a lot of fun. And then there was also this idea of growth. They are actually there to learn a lot. They're there to put away their phones too. That's another kind of thing we've been working on, so that there's so that there's actually a goal. There is a goal. You are supposed to win these things or try to win, and but the outcome is beyond, it is, I think we should try to play to win. There should be an effort to have mastery of a skill. And if you don't win, it can't be this crushing thing with, crushingly negative thing. That's kind of where we're at. That's where we're at.
I'm just curious on the cell phones, because this is a conversation that comes up on almost every webinar I do, regardless of sport. How do you handle your youth bringing phones to your events, practices, whatever the case may be? What's your rule of thumb?
Okay, it's actually something we've been dealing with for a long time. As they get a little older, they all get given phones, and we feel we're up against $1 trillion industry, of getting your attention and marketing and selling these things. And, the kids use it to communicate too with their parents. So what do? The latest thing is you put your phone away unless we need parents also cooperation on this. So that's been the thing. We had to actually have a vote and say, look, we're going to get them to put their phones away. Are you okay with that? And so get them to put their phones away. Halfway through, they can check for their messages or see if mom and dad have sent something. And then they're supposed to put it back. But, just getting them not always looking at their phone, not always playing games has been, and actually we've got a lot of support for it. That's how we've handled it. You can check, or if you need a phone or something happens, the coach has a phone. So that's how we've done it. Last point, sometimes we actually make them take their phones because we time a lot of the drills, so they take them on the court. So there's an exception. That's what we've done.
The reason I kind of precurse that is it comes up in a lot of the cyberbullying on phones is become a big thing. So that's the intentional part of coaching, is trying to curb that. And it's really difficult because they're in that little world, but you don't really see it. So, reinforcing that point, being respectful when you're using communication. And many sports now have like social media policies and communication on the phones. So you're not getting into that more on the team side than probably on the individual sports, but just something to be cognizant of. Okay, what about the other group? What did you talk about in terms of intentionality, in terms of teaching your athletes life skills?
Can I just jump in and make one comment on the cell phone?
Sure.
That is that with my university age kids, they're not on their phone constantly. They'll check their phone at the end of an hour, but it's not like they're on it every single second. They're not sort of driven to it, and lots of them don't use their cell phones at all when they're in the club for practice,
which is awesome because they've probably morphed or evolved. And maybe I hope at some point they're not the electronic babysitters that they are with the younger age groups, because the younger kids are just addicted to them. The older age groups, like my son and daughter now, they're in their 20s, they have their phones with them all the time, but I don't allow them to have it at dinner. Like it's not in our dinner area. Like there's certain things from a coaching perspective. I also said with my players, well, give your phones to your parents. So these 2 hours of practice, this is our time. This is us practicing. So the older age groups are being a little bit more respectful for it. It's the younger ones who kind of break them into habits because they've kind of gotten into it. So it's a valid point. Okay, what about other group? Any other tips and tricks for who we've got in the room?
Manuela, did you want to pipe in?
We're among friends, so don't feel nervous.
I think she's having trouble with her headphones. Can't hear you yet.
You can do the chat option. I can see your chat. So if you are good typing, I could read the chat. I could share it with the rest of the group. Audio and technical glitches always happen in these.
If hopefully she'll type. So while she's doing that, one of the things that I brought up was, and I don't know if it was, sorry, David, you that mentioned this, you know, playing to win. I come from a different background than everybody here, so that's not my focus with my athletes. What we try to teach our guys is it's okay to fail, and fail is not the right word, and I can't even think of the right word. But like if you make a mistake or if things don't go well, this is a learning opportunity for you to learn how to deal with these situations. That's okay. Let's pick yourself up and try again. Nobody's gonna be mad at you for making a mistake. It's fine, or you know, doing an action inaccurately, that's fine. But now we're gonna teach you how to do it properly. So I think where there is a focus, I find a lot of the times in sport on winning, I think that there also has to be focus on how to learn from mistakes, or how to learn from a loss or something like that.
I couldn't agree with you more. One of my biggest beliefs is that sport has to be the environment where it's safe to fail, and encouraging them. And a lot of people critique me on this one. I want my players, regardless of sport I'm coaching, to make mistakes, because if they're not making the mistakes, they're not pushing themselves out of their comfort zones. And a big critique in hockey in particular is we became way too robotic in coaching, where we're critiquing them when they made those little mistakes all the time, where the kids then got scared to the point where they weren't going to be creative. So that whole evolution is changing. We're seeing in soccer, we're seeing a lot of other sports encourage that point where, you know, come out of your comfort zone, and it's okay if you fall, it's okay if you fail. And yeah, the winning at all costs, that's one of the reasons why I did what I did, because I did one of my kid quit because there was a coach. That's all he thought about every game. If they didn't win, he'd run short benches. It was just like, dude, these are 12-year-old kids. How are they going to grow as people if they don't have an opportunity to contribute? So I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, and I think too, as coaches, I'll call myself a coach even though I'm not. I think that, you know, we need to take these opportunities. If the same thing is happening over and over again, we need to be flexible and look at different ways to make that action correct, or, you know, teach it in a different way, so that either the action that they're doing is new, it's a new way of doing it, we never thought of that before, that's great, it's working for you, fabulous, you know, versus, you know, what's written down in the book and what we've always been taught to do, and you know, this is the way you do it. I think there just needs to be some flexibility, because everybody's different, everybody learns differently.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's really, winning becomes the byproduct if you focus on the process, right? That's the whole long-term development model. It doesn't happen instantaneously, but when you get to the university level, yeah, it's really high expectation. But when they're 12 years old, it's a totally different expectation. So good, valid points. So I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of other key nuggets, I guess. Jack Nicklaus, huge fan of him, what he did in the game of golf, but kid grows up a lot faster on the golf course. It teaches you how to behave. And I think the two best sports, PGA is doing an amazing job with their programs. Saw the first tee, you saw what PGA Canada is doing with Brooke, really focusing on, you know, the key things that you can learn from golf in terms of integrity and honesty. And you think of Bobby Jones, where he called a penalty on himself way back when, and it cost him winning a major event as an amateur. So there's some really good life lessons you can get from that. But also the other side of the coin is it really a life skill if you don't actually use it going forward? So tests in schools, but they're really good at it, but are they able to transfer that skill set? And I had the last probably 4 years with our other arm for Love of the Game. I hosted a lot of summits and conferences and webinars through that. And we had an opportunity to qualify for funding to hire a whole bunch of co-op students. And these are 20 somethings in university most of which didn't really have any work experience. And, you know, the key thing I kept reminding them is, you know, it's great to be book smart, but you got to start teaching yourself some street smart. So when you get out into the real world, you can communicate with your peers, you can, you know, you're punctual, and all the key things that they need when they come out of school and or out of sport and transfer into the real world. And literally every single one of them over the course of 4 months, which, like, wow, I can't believe how much I learned. So because it was intentional from our point in making sure that they're ready for the real world. Youth sport coach may in fact be the most significant individual determining the values and life skills children learn through participation. Steele is also a big researcher in the transformation of the importance of life skills being intentionally through sport and vis-a-vis coaches and leaders in sport. And I would be remiss in not talking about one of the best, if not the GOAT, in terms of life skill teaching, Pat Summitt. You may or may not be familiar with her. Sadly, she passed away way too soon. She was one of the all-time winningest coaches in NCAA Division I basketball on the female side, coached in Tennessee, and she was a true believer in teaching all of her athletes the life skills through the sport. This is her mantra, like the definite dozen that she was praised for. You notice the importance of respect and accepting responsibility, loyalty, hard work, which is the whole work ethic, the teamwork before yourself, and so on and so on. So many Pat Summitt new isms or quotes like John Wooden on the internet, and I highly encourage you to kind of research. She was only in her 60s, but before she passed away, she was the all-time winningest NCAA Division I coach. And then now Duke, Coach K, Mike K, is the all-time winning coach. But she accomplished winning, but she did it intentionally through developing her players as people first and then athletes second. And huge fan of what she did as a coach. And sadly, she's no longer with us, but her legacy was amazing. And if you talk to any of our athletes, they say just how much they learned to become better people first and then better athletes second. Life skill transfer. This will be part of your slide, so I'm not going to read it for verbatim. A community swim coach. It's the importance of transferring those skills from what you've learned through sport and then what you're going to do in life when you get a real job and or you get married and stuff. There's all this stuff that's going to carry forward from that opportunity through the sport itself. I couldn't agree with it more. And then last but not least, hiring athletes themselves. If you look at a couple of statistics here, 95% of Fortune 500 CEOs played college sports. And a lot of it is on the female side, where when they got that opportunity to play at a pretty high level, they got to a really high level on an executive side. But key things that they learn through sport, their goal setting, determination, their leadership skills that they develop. They're able to put strategy action and also pivot quickly. And literally, we heard that word for like the last 2 years through COVID. We all had to pivot to the digital side, et cetera, et cetera. Some companies were able to do it effectively, some not so much. Teamwork, the importance of sacrifice, playing under pressure and performing under pressure when you get into the workspace. Every day you've got time constraints or whatever the case may be, and the whole motivation commitment piece. So that's all learned through sport and largely because of the coaches that are making that important. So you look at the other statistic, 3 of 4 C-suite executives, candidates with sports experience will be better professionally in the workspace. And last but not least, the greatest coach of all time, Mr. John Wooden. There is a bazillion of Woodenisms on the internet. This is one of my favorites. A good coach can change a game. A great coach can change a life. His big belief and his philosophy, although he was one of the all-time winningest coaches before all the others came after him in NCAA with the UCLA Bruins, he wanted to coach the athletes as people first, student second, athlete third. That was his belief. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, and many others that played for him that went on to play in the NBA became best friends with John. Like there's a great book that Kareem wrote when John was late 80s, and he's walking him across the court after they had done a presentation. And Kareem's like 7 something, and John's only like 6'2". He's a point guard when he played Indiana, and how he became such a great friend of his through the course of teaching him, and they stayed friends for many, many years thereafter. So that's my spiel. That's the synopsis in an hour's period of time. There's lots and lots of material out there in terms of social emotional learning. And I can't thank all of you for being here enough, and I'll just open up for any other Q&A we want to do. Keep it on time. Jeff, is there anything else that I could cover or should cover, or has anybody else got any questions on material that I share with you?
Thank you, Glenn. That was a fantastic presentation. Yeah, we'll open the floor to any questions if anyone has any. And while we wait, or Simon, I see you've unmuted, and Dave, do you guys have a question?
I was just going to say, oh, go ahead. I'm actually, thanks. I don't have any questions at all, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any questions either, but I just have a comment, and that is, whenever you're teaching something, there's always parallels to broader life. So, you're doing something narrow and specific in your sport, but there are always parallels to how you learn in general, how you as an individual learn best. And when I'm working with an athlete, a student, I'm making those connections because I think it comes back the other way. It makes what we're doing, teaching a technique or something, more meaningful, because they can see it's not just an isolated little thing here.
Yeah.
It's plugged in. It's like a network of ways to learn and ways to acquire skills and acquire self-knowledge.
Couldn't agree more. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Now the crickets are in the room, Jeff.
Well, I think, at the end of the day, if nobody has any questions, first and foremost, as with any Squash Canada Coach PD webinar, you can always send an email to myself or to our presenter, in this case, Glenn, after the fact, if you think of something, because we will share that information. So I think, in the interest of time, we'll wrap things up for today. So thank you, Glenn, for a fantastic presentation on teaching life skills through sport. For those of you on the call, just a friendly reminder, we do have another Coach PD webinar coming up in a couple of weeks on April 19th on optimizing mindset, outlook, and performance by Ahad Raza, who is in Ontario, who's going to do another presentation for us. So I encourage you to register if you have not. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending today. We will get your the webinar in the CAC locker for your PD point, and we'll share the PowerPoint and the recording with you probably as early as tomorrow. Otherwise, thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Great presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.